Yeah, boys. You can, as I say, you can be in the A-Town um parades.
Oh yeah,
They always sing at the parades,
that
and
would
they
that would be the only fun way to participate in a parade.
that yeah. I mean, you get to ride around the little car.
Yeah,
You don't have to march like a
yeah.
loser.
I think once every 3 years I have actual interest in going to a parade, and then I go to them and I'm like, I remember why these aren't actually fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the parades are boring.
parades are boring as shit.
I went to the Pride Parade this year, and don't get me wrong, I was happy to be there. I got to mess with a heckler,
Yeah,
but holy shit, it is a slog.
yep, yep. And you potentially picked the funnest kind of parade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think it would be more fun if you go to like the one in Chicago or something.
correct.
I mean, this is A Town,
Yes.
right? Anyway,
Yeah.
by the way, so
Speaking of parades,
speaking of parades, it's been so long,
it's been such a long time.
such a long time. It's to the point where I was honestly kind of amazed how long it's been.
It was
So much has happened.
I know we saw this in between my vacations.
Yes, but we didn't get a chance to record.
And let me just immortalize this first world problem. Here's the thing that sucks about traveling.
Go on.
Here's the thing about sucks about being able to have the privilege and luxury of seeing the world. It does make your summer go by much faster.
Oh no, it sucks.
Yeah.
Like I feel like June trotted along at a good
Yep.
pace. I went to the Caribbean and then zoop,
Yep.
gone.
Because like here's for like traveling, like it consumes immediately the week before you leave, regardless of how long the trip is, right?
Yeah.
That week before you leave is just consumed with like travel prep and like your mind's
hmm
adjusting.
You're buying shit. You're like, what am I forgetting? You're
Yes.
making lists, checking them twice.
It consumes the week after you leave
Yes.
because like you're still coming down from like the traveling experience.
hmm
And that's like at minimum 3/4 of a month.
Yeah.
It's a long that's not
It's not
that's
nothing.
not a short time.
But yeah, so because of that, so we recorded the last time we recorded was the blackening,
The blackening.
which was
Oh
before
shit.
I left.
That was a while ago.
So like
Yeah.
early June 20-ish
God, what
something.
the fuck? It's August 1st.
It's August
We
1st.
are in the worst. Well, we
You
are
know, you
in.
know what all happened in that month since we recorded? We got a writer's strike.
We got a writer strike. We got
A
an
writer's
actor
strike.
strike.
Actor strike. Well, the
Yeah.
writer strike happened before, right? That's been
Yeah.
going on for like almost 3 months. Then
Yeah.
we got an actor strike.
Yeah.
Now we have
Aliens.
aliens.
Yeah.
Aliens. We have just the most massive movie like happening since
Yeah.
maybe No
2019.
Way Home.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we got Barbenheimer. It's been a stacked month. But we're here to talk about a movie that came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Wow, 3 minutes and 15 seconds
Yeah.
of just.
And not a single John Wick
Not-
comparison yet.
There it is.
It will be here though. Trust me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it will be here.
It has to be, I think, considering this movie.
Yeah.
But so we are 7 movies deep into the Mission Impossible movie. Well, some of us are
Yep.
because someone
I have not.
did not catch up.
And I have actually, I enjoyed this movie, and I have zero interest in catching up on this.
But there's so much fun.
And Fast Cars, Fast Furious. Until they go back and retcon and put the Transformers in all those movies.
Here's the thing. I think watching the escalation of these movies is what makes it feel even better.
Yeah,
going.
of course. Of course.
Not that, I mean, that also happens a bit with Fast and Furious, but I feel like this movie, like you feel that attachment to the characters a little bit more.
Yeah.
If that were to happen. Because like I do want to touch on like how you feel about certain characters later on.
I would love to. I would love to give my expert opinion.
But the basics of this movie, Ethan Hunt and his team are tracking down a dangerous weapon before it falls into the wrong hands, which is a very watered down synopsis of what the fuck is actually happening.
Oh my god, speaking of watered down submarines, I forgot how timely
this
movie was. Holy shit. We'll get there.
Yeah, so this movie is very it's been said before, like it's out there. It's about like taking down an AI program.
Right.
right? That's the whole thing. Ethan and his team are tracking down um, a little MacGuffin thing that's going
Yeah.
to help them go on and find whatever it is that the key opens, and that's
Yes.
that's the whole plot of it. We've known since the movie was announced there was going to be a two-parter.
Hmm.
This movie makes it very clear this is not going to resolve it.
Right.
Part one is just getting the key and figuring out what and where it is that this thing
Are
opens.
we for sure on two-parter, or is it still
Yes, for
three-part?
sure.
For sure.
Two-parter.
Not three-parter.
Oh God, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I think the fact that this man could potentially kill himself at any minute
Yeah.
doing any of these stunts, I don't think they want to plan that far ahead.
I'm kind of disappointed because, like, I don't know. I was here for like a three-parter action action thing.
I'm not opposed to it. And here's the thing. They had said that apparently these two were going to close out the series.
Yeah.
Um, but I think they've, COVID hits and then ideas start bubbling
Right.
and then they go, maybe we could potentially do something else if a story is
If
there.
a story is there.
And I think that's what makes this franchise so successful is that they don't, they are not afraid to take their time to make a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it gives them a chance to actually think of something good to happen and how to do it,
Yeah.
and it makes the movies actually come out good.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and go through the story a little bit, kind of just
Hit the
hit the points, and then we'll discuss some of the points. So pretty nice and easy uh, structure. You have your intro, your cold
Right.
open with a submarine, which it
Yeah.
doesn't implode because this is a real actual submarine that's probably up to code. This movie came out the week after it was confirmed.
Was
that
it that soon?
I want to say it was like the
It
week
was that
after
soon. Yeah.
that submarine imploded, or
Yeah.
submersible, excuse me,
Yes.
because it's not even a real submarine.
Yeah.
What a saga, by the way.
What a saga in combination with the fact that, like, AI.
Yeah.
Like, this movie, like, came at the perfect. Oh, maybe not perfect. That might be hyperbole, but like, I know
And
it's always.
it's a very glass onion
Yeah.
situation, I feel, where like this movie feels very topical about AI
In the way that
in the
felt.
way that in the way the glass onion felt topical about like your Elon Musk's,
Being
right?
fucking stupid as shit.
Exactly. As the recent changes to the X app,
That shit happened.
Twitter died.
Yeah, Twitter died.
But this movie has been in production since like 2018.
Wow.
2018, 2019. I mean, the movie was written, I think, 2018,
Yeah.
like right after Fallout came out.
As a former college professor of mine said 2 years ago now, who the hell remembers 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But that was being written before it went into production in 2019.
Yeah.
So then there is no way they could have predicted
This.
like just how relevant AI has become.
Well, it does make me wonder because, like, I know there's some sort of psychological phenomenon, and I forget what phenomenon. And I forget what it's called, where you see something and then you start seeing it everywhere. But it is kind of bonkers how that one. There was that Atlantic article that kind of like made ChatGPT famous,
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, "This is the death of the English class." And then I have like people who like don't talk to me at all, who like, "Oh, have you seen this?" I'm like, "No, I've never seen this article before." But after that, it's just like AI up the wazoo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it does make you wonder how. But I don't mean this at all from a conspiratorial sense, but it just does make you wonder, like, how does the chain of information flow from like thing that's about to hit the market and like enough time to go back and be like, like pop culture media is going to react to this thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so that's the thing about like AI and ChatGPT and all that stuff.
It
Like,
existed.
It's existed for a long time, and it's always been when this hits, it's
Right.
going to be potentially bad.
Yeah.
Right. but I think it's just recently that we've learned just how snowbally of an effect it actually does have.
Yeah.
Where like it's nothing for a very long time, and then just within the last year,
It became
it
something.
not just became something, but it became something honestly kind of scary with
Yeah.
how like genuinely like impressive it is.
Hmm.
Like it starts just making pictures of like what looks like a cat,
Yeah.
right? You're when we used to use Dolly,
Right.
right? We used to use that little one to make pictures, and they would all look like something out of your nightmares.
Right.
Like, yeah, you would put in big titty goth girl, and if you squint, it might look like a big titty goth
By
girl
Picasso.
by
Yeah.
Picasso.
Yeah.
But now you put in big titty goth girl, and you go, oh,
Yeah.
this could pass.
Right.
And that's all been within the span of like a year.
And yet the Secret Invasion intro still looked a little potato.
But yeah, but to be fair, I think that was almost on
I think it
purpose.
was supposed to look potato.
Yeah,
But it's still.
still. Anyway, um, so now that we got that very topical thing out of the way,
Topics.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we start with our submarine intro.
Yeah.
We then move on to a very fun like airport
Yeah.
chase scene, which is very very fun. We are introduced to our main crew and a newcomer played by Haley Atwell, who's got a donk in this movie. There's a scene at the end where she's getting
I do not deny, nor have I ever denied the booty. But yes.
yeah, she gets on the front of like the train and it's just like a wide shot of her ass and I'm like, damn girl.
These are the details that someone who's seen the movie 5 times catches, ladies
Yes.
and gentlemen.
Absolutely. Um anyway, so we're introduced to her. Then we move to Italy, which we have a very fun chase scene, which is very reminiscent of Fast X,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
could not have been planned for Rome to get destroyed twice in one
In
year,
1 year. Yeah, the
at
little
least.
Fiat. The little Fiat.
A little
That was
Fiat
beautiful.
that from the
Yeah.
trailers. We move to Venice, which has the big party scene,
Yes.
which then leads us into our big set piece, which is
The choo choo.
the choo-choo
I
train,
love the
right?
choo choo.
And all throughout this, they are chasing down parts of a key. And I've seen a lot of people be very confused about the logistics of like, what are we doing for this key? What do we need this key for?
Like the people watching were confused?
Like the people were saying, like, if Ethan has this key, why doesn't he just destroy it? Or why doesn't he just keep it and then
Oh.
look for the other one instead of giving the other key to the other key?
Well, because they need to confirm each other.
They need to confirm each other.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a lot of things that like some people just
Yeah.
are not paying attention.
Well, this is the kind of media environment that spawns. I've said this before, I'll say it again. My least favorite trend. The trend of X ending explained when the ending needed zero
No
explanation.
explaining.
I was looking up for reviews for Talk to Me, which is going to be our next podcast episode.
Uh-huh.
And then the first thing that came up was like, Talk to Me ending explained. I'm like, what needed explaining?
You'd be surprised.
It was clear as day.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are some
It's not
takes
like
on that.
symbolism explained. It's not like allegory explained. Just like the ending explained.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, we have failed
Here's the thing.
many generations.
While I don't ever buy into like the explaining of it as far as like unless you're watching a movie kind of like your Hereditaries or like Lamb,
Yeah.
like movies that are very like weird and out there, like those I can understand. But there is something where like I don't want to watch a movie, but I would like to hear someone just talk to me about the entire movie. It's a very like I'm bored and I don't want to watch something type of thing.
I get that, but I'm just upset that they're all like summaries.
Yeah.
They're all like, this is just what happened. I'm like, I'm aware. I would like to hear some commentary. Which is what we are here to provide.
Yes.
Anyway.
But anyway, I do like the introduction of Haley Atwell's character of Grace into the world of spies because it gives someone like it gives you your like outsider point of view because we haven't had that as far as I can remember in these movies. Every character has always been
an insider,
like a spy or aware of what is happening. Even in the older movies, like Ethan has like a girlfriend slash wife character,
Yeah.
but she's aware of what he does.
Mm.
She knows the risk that there is there. Um, and I did not get a chance to catch up on this movie, so I am a little blurry on those details. But even when she shows up in the last movie
Mm.
as like a guest cameo thing.
Haley Atwell?
No, no, no,
No,
no.
the
His ex-wife.
Gotcha.
Um, she knows what's going on.
Mm.
She's like, oh shit, like is Ethan in trouble again?
Yeah.
And she helps like deactivate a nuclear bomb.
So that does sound so as someone who's not initiated into
Into the cult of Tom
the
Cruise.
cult of Tom Cruise. Um I feel like yes, I would enjoy that dynamic. I enjoy the Haley Atwell character. It's not like a total fish out of water thing, but it's nice to see like no, I am strictly just like a master thief. Like I'm not here for this spy shit. And it's like, oh, my brain. I always thought of those two like going together. But yes, I can see why she would draw the line.
Yeah, she is very capable.
Yeah.
Like even though she is an outsider to like the spy world,
Right.
she is still got some skills enough to like hold her own. She's not gonna get her ass kicked.
And yet
right
it's still
away.
like, no gracias.
Exactly. Which I get, because like if you're just here to steal some money and like get yourself through the day,
yeah.
and then you're like, someone over here is trying to destroy the world.
Yeah. I mean,
You're like, no, thank you, sir.
I said no gracias for getting out of bed before 9 a.m. this morning. So like, I would fully empathize.
Yeah.
I think my frustration and my two main frustrations with this movie, the character dynamic between her and Ethan, I
Mhm.
don't like find that compelling.
What do you mean?
And maybe like because I don't know the Ethan character that well, but he's like, Haley Atwell, like I will protect you. Like,
No, that is his
that is his
character.
I don't know how much of this. Yeah.
And there is a point made in previous movies, and it's almost like you know that thing you do where you go up to me and you go boop.
Yep.
There is that in the last movie at the end. So the whole reason why the last movie happens is because Ethan refuses to sacrifice Luther.
Yeah.
They have these uranium cores that are supposed to like activate these nuclear bombs.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of leaving Luther to die and taking the cores and getting the mission done, he saves Luther, which costs him.
So he's basically Batman.
He is always going to try to save the people around him at the expense of potentially like getting the mission done, because he knows that's what he wants to do.
Fair enough. I don't know how much like romance was supposed to be built up between the two, but like that I didn't like.
I don't know that there is.
Yeah.
I didn't read it as that necessarily, because of how his character usually is.
Mm-hmm.
There is something between him and Ilsa,
who
does die in this movie. But I think the problem with Ilsa's character, as much as I love that character, and I do love Rebecca Ferguson, I think the problem is in every movie, so in the first movie she shows up and she's just like a badass. And then they get the mission done, they work together, and then she fucks off.
Yeah.
Then the next movie comes out and she's like, well, you said you were going to help me, but then you left me alone, so then I went to do more bad shit.
Yeah.
But I'll help you now. And then at the end of the movie, you think she's coming back with them, and then the next movie starts, which is this one, and you're expecting them to be working together from the beginning, but she's not. She's on her own.
Yeah.
So like when they're telling us like, are they banging? Are they not banging? Like I would assume they probably are.
Right.
But they also spend a lot of time apart. Like they're not together like the IMF group usually is.
Yeah.
Like
not a fully integrated member into the squad.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is a missed opportunity, because I think she is. It would have felt more impactful if you're like, oh, for the past 4 years they've been working very closely together.
I agree. Even having not seen anything else, like even from this, like you could tell from the opening shot that they've been like estranged to some degree. Yeah. And it's like, okay, this doesn't feel like.
It doesn't feel as impactful.
It feels like there was only room for one white woman. And they made their choice.
They made their choice.
Like in Walking Dead. Remember when like Walking Dead could only like have like one black guy at a
Oh
time?
yeah,
Yeah.
that was very obvious though.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least here they still have another white woman in Vanessa Kirby.
They do. They
So,
do. We've made progress.
some progress. And technically speaking, even though Palm Clemente F is
Fucking love that character in this movie.
she's great.
Yeah.
Even though she's I think French, she's I think Korean. I don't know if I would count that as a white woman because she's primarily French.
Right.
But anyway, she's sticking around, so that's good. But anyway, so yeah, we are introduced to a couple of new characters, including Paris, who is like our new. I don't want to say big bad, but she is like the henchman of the big bad, right? Because we have Gabriel, who is our primary antagonist, I would say, in this movie,
Yeah.
even though he is being more or less puppeted by this AI, right?
Yeah.
By the entity.
Right.
And I do like that name
I like
because
the
it's
idea of
very
yeah.
like not not very descriptive. Like it's just like it's a thing.
It is kind of like if this were to happen and an AI would gain the type of sentience that it has in this movie, I think that is what you would describe it. You would describe it as an entity, somewhere in between, somewhere in between living and non-living. But yeah,
Yeah. There is something I want to discuss about Gabriel when we get to the train sequence a little bit and this entity thing. But I do think he doesn't do a lot early on to make me think like he is a huge threat.
Yeah, that's my
It's
other.
not until he starts actually like fighting.
He's my other big problem with this movie.
Yeah, he seems a little dry, I think.
It is very. Remember the Spectre trailers?
Yes.
Christoph Waltz is like, I am the author of all your pain, and it's like, neat. I feel like this movie tried to tell us that he was the author of a whole bunch of pain, but like,
Yeah, that's the problem. I think that this movie kind of glossed over a bit.
yeah,
You are shown a few flashbacks. Apparently, from what I've heard, there was supposed to be an Indiana Jones style 25-minute like opening sequence where like you're supposed to follow Tom and this dude,
yeah,
and then he ends up killing his like
his
girlfriend, partner, or something.
Got you.
Which I guess would have maybe made him feel more personal, more of a threat.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of almost wish it would have just been some random person.
I'm gonna make one offhand statement.
Go for it.
Ignore it. I'm gonna move on. Here's my hot bad take. The Indiana Jones franchise is the most overrated
Oh,
franchise
100%.
in cinematic history.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Moving on. I agree. But I do think that having that just kind of be like, oh, here's a 5-second flashback of him shooting someone. Here's a 5-second flashback of a lady dying on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's it. You don't really know what this guy is capable of.
Right.
You are told that he enjoys making people suffer
Yeah.
and that he's an asshole and blah blah blah. But other than that,
But even that, like, fucking Jason Momoa's character in Fast this summer is more interesting.
but because we see him do shit.
Yeah.
Like we are constantly taking,
And he's quirky. Like he's a quirky, like interesting original supervillain. Whereas this guy just seems like it seems like they couldn't get John Leguizamo.
he seems bored.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, there's something that I do want to bring up about him later.
Yeah.
But the character that we actually spend most of the time like seeing chase Ethan down is Paris.
And I love Paris.
Paris is great.
Yeah.
I think she is a lot of fun. I like her quirky costumes.
She reminds me a lot of Xenia Onatopp and that name in Goldeneye.
Oh, geez, I haven't thought of that movie in.
She has that energy just modernized for 2023.
Yeah, and she is. To me, I compare her a little bit to that Jason Momoa character of just like kind of chaos, unhinged, and weird.
Yeah.
Without like actually talking a lot,
right,
and like cracking jokes, but like that energy is there. There is once we get to Rome and they're like chasing people down in this like giant APC,
Yeah.
and she's just like smiling and like laughing, and she's like running scooters over
And then getting frustrated.
and getting frustrated.
Yeah.
I do love the scene where she is able to like knock the little Fiat
Yeah.
around,
Yeah.
and then her car stalls, and
Yeah.
she's just seeing the Fiat spin in circles.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's just this pure look of confusion in her face. It's very good. She does a good job selling it. Um, and I do like that she's able to just speak French in this whole movie.
Yeah.
It seems very, it's like a very like character choice type of thing,
Yes.
but also makes her feel distant from like
Distant
potentially
from.
everything else that's happening.
I think that's a good observation.
Um, Speaking of like the Fiat and all this shit, I will say this is probably the most humor
In a Mission
in the
Impossible movie.
Mission. Like all the Mission Impossible movies have funny shit that happens. A lot of it comes from Benji.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it comes from like when shit just is going wrong. It's like situational. I think this movie is the one that does take the time to like give you a beat to be like hee hee hee.
I'm curious. Has the internet been mad online about
Uh,
about the humor in this movie or no?
no, I think a lot of people think it almost feels refreshing with how
The other ones have gone.
well, I mean, no one dislikes the other ones either. That's the
Yeah.
thing. And even this movie, like critically and like commercially, like not commercially financially, but like audience wise,
Mm-hmm.
like it's been very well received. Like people who see it generally go, "Oh, this is good."
Yeah.
um, and a lot of people are praising the fact that like it does take time to use like characters for their like you know comedic timing.
Right.
That's one thing. Like Tom Cruise, say what you will about him, and I think Tropic Thunder started to prove this. He can be pretty fucking funny,
Yeah.
and I think this movie uses that a little bit. Um, and it's also like comedy that makes sense within what's happening in the story. So I think that's why
Mm-hmm.
people are not like saying, "Oh, this is like Marvel humor."
Right.
So I think that's been helping quite a bit. As someone who doesn't hold the first movie up as high as other
Hmm.
people do. I mean, I like the movie, but I think it's definitely aged a lot,
Hmm.
and I just think that some of the other movies are just a little better.
What year did it come out?
98, 96,
Jesus.
no, 96, I think.
That's crazy.
Um, I don't really have a lot of like nostalgia for Kittredge, but I do like his character in
Is
this.
he dead by the end of the movie, or is he?
Kittredge, no, Kittredge
No.
is alive.
Considered alive.
Um, that is one thing that I do think is a bit of a misdirect in this movie, where they make it seem like he's the one that's kind of doing
Pulling
the
the.
bad shit.
Yes. Yes. And
So
then.
what's your take on that? So at the end of the movie, we are in the train. We find out that Alana, who is Vanessa Kirby's character, has the other half of the key. She has picked a benefactor to buy the key.
Right.
Um, and now we learn that the person who's buying the key from her
Yeah.
is Kittredge,
Yeah.
who is supposed to be the secretary of the IMF.
Yeah. And then we find out that his boss was a piece of shit.
Yes.
Yes.
And so then there is that bit of a misdirect of like, well, is Kittredge
The baddie.
the baddie or not? So
Yeah.
what is your reading on this? Because I
So
have my own very specific and reason why.
very like upon first seeing the movie, and I think this is the conversation we had in the parking lot. Or what the conversation we were having in the parking lot like was referring to. Slight frustration, but not like, but also like some appreciation. So this is my first one, right? I don't know these characters. Part of my like initial gut reaction to like this movie, I forget if this was like a Simpsons joke, but they were like talking about like something they had read or watched, and they're like, "Oh, we found out like he was a double agent, and he was a double agent the whole time." And it was like, all right, I feel like this beat of like character switching sides has been played like one too many times. If I remember correct, Kittredge's boss is like, isn't he the actual like Secretary of Defense?
Yes.
Yes. So there's something interesting there about like the off the books like Black Ops guy being the good one, and like the actual established like government authority
Hmm.
being the bad one, because that's like kind of that's the one like kind of like interesting-ish little. I'm very curious to see where this will go on the next one, but it's like all the superpowers are vying to like control this
Hmm.
entity, right? So Kittredge is team destroy or he's team control, or we don't really know yet.
So I think for the sake, and that this is my
Yeah,
reading, right? This is how I'm taking it, and this is how I've actually always seen the IMF.
yeah,
Like the secretary of the IMF has always been like this to me.
yeah,
They are always like forward facing to my government, to my officials. I follow your lead.
yeah,
So right now the lead is we want to control this thing.
yeah.
My stance is we're going to control this thing.
Right.
But
On the ground,
on the ground, like
different story.
realistically speaking, with my team, this shit needs to go.
So it's like what their actual practice is the American ideal, right? It's
Yeah.
it's what we would want, like our country to do.
Yeah, and I think
But
it's also the fact that at the beginning
yeah,
where so there's a scene
yeah,
where we see all the United States like
yeah,
agencies, like head agencies, right? Um we get a bunch of cameos on
yeah.
here. And Ethan infiltrates them, he knocks them out, and he talks to Kittredge.
Right.
And Kittredge does give him this whole spiel like this mission is going to like probably not be fun.
Yeah.
He says your days for fighting for the greater good are over.
Right.
Like you need to pick your side.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is Kittredge making sure like, are you the right person to do this mission?
Yeah.
Because then Ethan responds with, I'm on the same side that I've always been. So he's
Right.
always going to do what is actually right, not what like the country wants.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of the times the missions are. A lot of the times the mission is you need to do this for the good of the country,
Right.
right? And then there's that scene at the end where Dillinger is talking to Gabriel. So
Yeah.
that's the head of the security, of national security. And he says, like, well, we could team up.
Mm.
We can use like the great power of the entity along with like the huge military power of the United States.
Right. Right. Right.
We will control the world. And he's like, so you want to destroy like all these people and you want to have all this power? And the guy goes, yeah, for the greater good.
Mm.
So that to me contrasts like the greater good in the American sense is control the entity, take over.
Right.
Whereas Kittredge says you need to not do that anymore.
Well, it's kind of like like in many ways, Kittredge is kind of like this George Washington type, where he was like the responsible thing to do with this power is to abdicate it, right? I mean,
Hmm.
in this case, like destroy the thing.
Hmm.
Whereas, U.S. foreign policy, especially since the 1900s, but even like previous to that, has basically been like, yes, we're built on like the ideals of like freedom and liberty, but like fucking imperialism's here, baby, and we're on top. Let's go. Right. So
Yeah.
it is interesting to see that dynamic in play.
Hmm.
Um,
And that's why I think even when he's talking to Gabriel, when Dillinger's talking
yeah,
to Gabriel, he says like, the guy who has a key, like he's not going to be hard to get rid of, and he's like, oh, you're like I'm aware.
yeah.
He knows that Kittredge is not eye to eye with him as far as what's happening here.
So here's my question: do you see Mission Impossible as American James Bond? Because for a while, like people were saying, like that's Jason Bourne. I've also never seen a Jason Bourne movie.
Wow,
Yeah,
not even the Jamie Renner one.
no,
Wow.
never seen a Jason Bourne movie. But like now, after having this conversation, I'm like, just as like James Bond is this archetypical British figure,
Hmm.
I see now how Ethan Hunt is like the American version of that. And I would be ready to say that like Mission Impossible is American James Bond. Um, Given the conversation we had, is that like do Mission Impossible fans feel that way or
I think a lot of people see Mission Impossible as like a modern version of your James Bond, like
yeah,
dealing with way more topical issues to like the current, you
Mm.
know, political climate. Um, but I will say, I know, like if you're comparing almost apples to oranges, right? Or basically you're comparing a small bundle of apples to a gigantic bundle of apples
Yeah.
because Mission Impossible is only 7 movies,
Right. We're on
whereas
Bond 26.
holy shit.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Personally, I feel like Mission Impossible is a more consistently solid franchise.
Yeah.
Even
The James Bond franchise is not consistent.
it is absolutely
Yeah.
not. And also, I think the fact that we've had one Ethan Hunt
Right.
since '96,
Yeah.
and you are in 2023, and this man is still
Well, that's definitely a difference where the actor in the Mission franchise, I would say, is bigger than the character. Whereas in Bond, the character is bigger than the actor. And I don't think that's a good or a bad thing. I don't think you can have a non Tom Cruise Ethan Hunt.
not Ethan Hunt.
Yes.
And I think they know that.
Yeah.
And also, there really is no huge need for that. So there was a point where they were like, Tom might not want to do this
Mhm.
forever.
Yeah.
And that's why they brought Jeremy Renner in
For Mission Impossible?
from Mission Impossible.
Oh.
So they brought poor Jeremy Renner.
Yeah.
This is the second time that he has had an action franchise where they were like, you, hun, you might be taking over.
This is just God telling him to focus on his music.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why he's introduced in 4
Mm.
as another agent
Yeah.
who works for the CIA or something like that. And he does some action sequences. He does a very similar sequence to like the wire hanging scene from the first movie,
Mm.
except now it's with like a metallic
Mhm.
magnetic suit.
Mhm.
Very similar. And again, it was like if Tom decides to step away, we have this other likable character who
Yeah.
is also very capable, but he's a different guy.
Yeah.
I think what the Mission Impossible movie could do is if for some reason Ethan does decide to step away from risking his ass and almost dying in every movie, you could pull someone into this and do shenanigans.
Yeah, but I don't know. Hold on a second.
We're back.
Back to business.
Back to business.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the characters that we liked. We talked a little bit about some of the negatives that we've had. So let's talk about the meat and potatoes, about what people actually come here to see, and
The
it's
stunts.
the stunts, the action.
Yes.
I have a lot of thoughts about that in this movie. Some of it good, some of it actually not as good as one would expect for someone who has seen the movie 5 times. Um, the stunts in this movie though are still very good.
I love the train, not the train jump. I love that whole train.
The train sequences.
Yeah.
The
Awesome.
build. I will say. Let's just get out of the way. I think that the huge set piece that they build up for this, the stunt, right, which is him jumping off the side of a cliff and then parachuting, right? It's like base jumping with a bike.
Yes.
While technically it is very impressive and extremely dangerous if you actually like
think about it.
Yeah. Like you are jumping off of a ramp.
Isn't that base jumping?
Base jumping is you just jump off, but it's got to be a very specific cliff angle so that you don't end up smacking into something by the time you build up distance and open up your chute. But he has to propel himself with a motorcycle and then open up the parachute, right? And to say, oh, you do that once, fine, that's cool. But you don't just do that once when you're prepping for a stunt. You have to do it over and over and over. I think something about like 300 jumps he had to do.
Jesus.
Which is...
It's scary.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then you also have to figure out, okay, well, how far do you have to have the camera for this to work?
Right.
Like what happens if like the chute opens up and now you're obstructing the camera?
Right.
So like there's a lot of moving parts on this that make this a very technically scary stunt to make.
Yeah.
However, when you see it on screen, it doesn't feel as grand as like the Halo jump in the last one,
Mm.
or climbing up the side of the Burj Khalifa in 4.
Before.
Um, and it doesn't feel as life threatening as like in the fifth movie. He has to go under this like underwater server
Mm.
to like replace a chip,
Mm.
and he had to hold his breath for like 6 minutes.
Jesus.
And like that's him doing that
Yeah.
and like fucking drowning as he's
Yeah, he's
doing
doing
this
this,
stuff, right?
right?
So you don't feel that because it's so it feels so basic.
Mm.
But when you actually consider like what is happening in the background, like on the BTS side, I think that's what makes the stunt work for me. I just didn't feel as excited watching it in the movie itself. And it doesn't help that it's what they showed you in the trailer.
I wonder if so the trailer makes it different. This is I kind of see the stunt in a similar way to where I see the Oppenheimer bomb,
Hmm.
where the stunt itself I like really liked. I won't say like I loved, like I really liked the initial explosion in Oppenheimer, but the what I loved was how like
I have so many thoughts on that explosion, by the way.
in that movie I love just kind of watching it like envelop and like not just the initial boom, but that like what felt like 2 minutes, but was probably shorter. That like you know
The build up,
minute,
the
not just
anticipation.
the anticipation, but the aftermath of just like watching like the clouds roll and the explosion roll around. That I found beautiful. Here, I love the jump as a kickoff to what the rest of the train sequence was.
Yes.
And I love watching the train falling off the thing and then watching them like run up
That
like cars.
I love that
Yeah.
that sequence. And so
What's the story behind the production of that, by the way?
they built a train and they threw it off a cliff.
Yeah, Inception style, where you've got
Yeah, so they
yeah,
did that for the initial like the caboose, not the caboose, sorry,
when they're in the
the
car.
engine,
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
engine going over
yeah,
like that goes over like an actual thing. They threw it like in train
yeah,
off of a track, right?
yeah,
Then they had practical sets
yeah.
of the train carts, and then they would like have hydraulics to make
To
them
make them
twirl around
twirl
and
around.
everything, have them on wires.
Yeah, that was cool.
I will say the one thing that does feel a little jarring in this is you can tell that a lot of like the furniture falling is very CG,
Mm.
but it still does not take away, at least for me, the fact that these are actual people running around the train car that, while empty, is still rolling around and getting slammed up and down.
There is something fascinating to me about watching anybody walking on a surface they're not supposed to walk on. Like walking on a ceiling, walking on a wall. Like I find that
Fascinating.
so cool.
And I think what I like about that is that it is done practically.
Yeah.
I think that to me makes it even if like you can show me CG and I go that looks dope,
Right.
but I think knowing that this is a production where they are willing to go the extra mile and actually do it
Yeah.
practically, I think to me that does so much more in my brain to make me like suspend even that disbelief of like the CG looking
There
iffy.
my problem is my problem with CG is not the ability to suspend disbelief. In fact, I don't even count it as like a problem of CG. Like the recent Phase 4, Phase 5 Marvel stuff, like has been notorious for getting criticized for always ending in a big CG fight. And I've never really minded those. I don't have a problem with CG. It's more the fact that like when a movie like this or a Nolan movie does a really cool practical like stunt or effect, like that just like in general stands out to me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just watched Tenet, like I was very mid on Tenet, but the scene where like the fucking plane like crashes into a hangar,
Haven't seen Tenet.
I'm like, that's really cool. Like the Joseph Gordon-Levitt like fight in Inception where the room is spinning. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's fucking amazing. The truck in the Dark Knight,
So,
fucking amazing,
mm.
right? So there is. It's not
The
that.
train scene in Inception.
Yeah, yeah.
Just,
It's not that I have a problem with CG. It's just when you get those like awesome set pieces of like a really cool practical effect, they just like naturally stand out.
it
Like,
just
yeah,
amplifies everything.
there's
And
no.
and again, like I said, I I completely understand why people use CG in a lot of things. A lot of the times it's cheaper. A lot
You
of the
couldn't do the
times
MCU with. You couldn't do the MCU with practical effects.
no.
Yeah,
It would look like absolute
yeah,
piss.
yeah.
Um, but there is something to me in my brain when I go see a Mission Impossible movie, when I go see a John Wick movie, where I'm like, what they are doing is like they are doing 99%
Practical.
practical with
Yeah.
what they can.
Yeah.
If they have to use CG, is because it's something that is just
Right.
undoable, or you can't like plan for it to go right, and you
Right.
have to do
Right.
CG. Um, I really like the like everything, like even the chase through Rome. Like we talked about, we have two examples of this. We saw Fast X,
Hmm.
and I think even on our video for it, I said that it annoys me that I know they have real cars.
Yeah.
I know they have real stunts and they're doing, but it looks CG. It looks cartoony
Yeah.
because they like fix shit in post and it just does not look
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, you're watching them and you're like, if they are using CG,
I'm not seeing it.
like I
Yeah.
can't fucking tell.
Yeah.
Like that whole chase through Rome in both the big car and in the little Fiat, like it just looks
Awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, the hits feel like they're hitting, like the cars feel heavy.
Yeah.
Um, again, the comedic effects of like him having to drive with one hand because the other hand is uh
Handcuffed.
handcuffed
Yeah.
to the girl,
Yeah.
and then they fall down the stairs and then they roll and now they're back to switch and now she has to drive.
Right.
Like all of these things just fall in place very effectively, and I think that's why I personally like the question that I had to post here, like, is this one of the best long running
Franchises.
franchises
I mean, are there any that people consider to be like duds?
of the movies?
Yeah.
Two.
Number two, or
Number
two
two.
movies total.
No, number two.
Okay, so then you have what?
And
This
even
is
then, like, I remember I rewatched number two before Fallout,
yeah,
and I didn't hate it. It's got a really, really awesome motorcycle chase scene
yeah.
into, um, and I don't think it's great, but it's still like solid.
It's good.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. So I mean, what else? What else can like boast that pedigree?
John Wick.
Not as long running.
Not as long
And
running.
here, so that'll lead into my next question. But before I get there, I mean, the fact that you're able to create so many of these, and like the fact that it's only two, and then you have what number is this? Eight.
Seven.
Okay, so three, four, five, six, seven that are like solid.
And honestly, there was a huge like it's almost like a big boom
Yeah.
in four, because four kicks off.
What year does four come out in?
Oh geez, 2011 maybe.
That's the one that I saw slash didn't see in theaters. That's the one where I was going to go with somebody, and then the theater wouldn't let them in because they got there so late.
Oh
So
really?
then I'm like, well, I'm not watching this movie alone. So then I
Man,
left.
imagine the world
Yeah,
where Thano watched Mission Impossible 4 and now loved Scientology.
I was gonna make that as a joke, and you stole it. I'm like, that's yeah. It was for the best.
It's for the best.
Someone needs to. Someone needs to be able to have the spirit to take away those people's First Amendment rights.
Dude, I don't know, man. If Tom Cruise having his First Amendment right to make insane movies is what it takes,
Yeah.
I forgive Scientology.
Here's the thing. I I like make jokes about that, and people say like you can't disrespect the First Amendment. I mean, people disrespect the First Amendment fucking
That's
every
it.
year. Here, I want to disrespect it for good. But yeah,
I think I don't know. I think this and John Wick are, and this is not like hyperbole.
yeah,
I 100% believe this. I believe Mission Impossible and John Wick are single handedly keeping the action movie alive.
I see. Yeah, I mean, who else?
Who else?
Right.
I mean, you have MCU, but
Most,
that's a
but
different.
that's like a subgenre.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. I think action is a subgenre of like MCU superhero movies.
You mean action goes underneath?
Yes.
No, I'd say action is the umbrella.
You think so?
Action is the
You think
umbrella.
superhero movies are primarily action movies?
Primarily, but not
superhero.
entirely. Primarily, but not entirely.
I almost see them more as like fantasy, not like not like medieval fantasy.
Yeah, but then that's tricky too, because then if you think about it, Star Wars is
But
fantasy.
here's the thing:
Yeah.
if I go up to someone and say, "Hey, what's your favorite action movie?" You are never going to hear. Maybe
Ask
you'll
that
hear Winter Soldier.
ask that question in 5 years to someone who's like 10 years younger than us. Just because of how much space in the because action, I would say, has large overlap with just the summer blockbuster in general.
I am going to post a question
Mm.
on Facebook. All
Ah,
right, friends.
real scientific research
I
coming,
need
coming up,
as
coming up right
many
now.
answers as.
Yeah, we're publishing a paper in the Dartmouth Review.
I need to answer as many answers as possible. What is your favorite
Action
action
movie.
movie? Please pick one or two at most.
Yes.
All
So,
right.
so yes, I would say in the pure non-superhero action movie, I would say like yes, these are keeping the because everything else you see, you're kind of gonna like forget.
Yeah.
Like I saw some Bullet Train on Netflix. Like I don't remember.
Holy shit! I forgot about Bullet
I
Train.
don't,
Was that last year?
it was last year.
Holy shit! It
Yeah,
was good. Don't get me
it was
wrong.
good, but I don't fucking remember it.
No,
The all right, so then that leads to my next question. This movie or John Wick 4?
I'm. Mm,
Wouldn't be a Cine-Scoots podcast without our John Wick
it wouldn't.
conversation.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I think this movie has more dynamic action or more diverse action.
Yeah.
John Wick, as much as I love John Wick, it's always pew pew pew, kick kick, pew pew pew, kick, pew
Right.
pew pew, kick.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It is great.
Yeah.
It still might edge out this movie for me. It still might. But there is something about just how different like all the set pieces in Mission Impossible
Yes.
feel.
Yes.
Because like you have just like the pure like paranoia of like the airport scene where you're like, oh, are they gonna get caught?
Right.
Like that's a very I love that scene actually a lot. That's one of my favorite bits of that movie. And it doesn't have like balls to the wall action.
Right.
It's all about like that tension building.
Yeah.
You don't get that in the John Wick movies. Like the car chase scene in John Wick is very quick. Like I honestly forgot how fast that scene is in John
Yeah.
Wick. Like he's in the car for maybe a minute
Yeah.
a total before he gets crashed, and now he's shooting people.
Yeah.
And again, very impressive, very well made, but it's not a full blown car chasing like the one that we get here. So that's the only reason why I think that paired with the fact that like the plot is a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
meaty here
Mm-hmm.
that could potentially like edge it out. But I don't know. It's for me at least, it's a very tight race.
So here's what I'll say. I think if you outline both these movies on paper, and I could give them to a group of like university undergrads, right? Writing one on one. On paper, Mission Impossible should be like hands down the better movie, right? It's got like, you know, character struggles. It's got maybe some sort of political message to say, like there's building of tension, but there's also releasing of tension,
Mm-hmm.
right? It hits a variety of like emotional beats. Um, whereas John Wick, I would say, is more monolithic. Like in instead of like building tension, releasing tension, John Wick just like tightens the rubber band as far as you think it'll go, and then it like
Yeah,
keeps fucking
it's
tightening.
all torque.
Yeah. And yet, I think in terms of judging both pieces by what they set out to do and how well they accomplished it, I think John Wick accomplishes what it sets out to do better than this movie does. Not to say
I
this movie's
think
bad.
I think what helps John Wick is that it's a full story.
It's a full story, but it's also not trying to be Like it's not trying to build romance. Not that this movie was
It's
spending.
not.
Yeah,
It's not. It's a. But that's the thing.
it's
That's
trying. It's just trying to be torque, and I think
yeah. John Wick
yeah,
is a very. That's the beauty of John Wick,
yeah,
that it's such a simple idea,
and it just
and
commits.
it commits to that.
Yeah,
Whereas this movie, the fact that it's a spy movie
right.
and it's an action movie, has to
Yeah.
it has to take these like beats,
Yes.
right? And I think that's what makes it like not feel as like
Yeah.
bombastic.
Like just compare Keanu and like Tom Cruise. Like Tom Cruise obviously shows like the more range in this movie, and like Keanu is more of just like a type, but like the type just works so well
Yes.
that
Mhm.
like I can't knock it. He's
Yeah.
like, I need a gun. I'm like, yeah, you fucking do, boy.
You know, before we wrap up,
Yeah,
um on that's a very good point.
yeah,
I will say I was watching this movie, and I think it was like the fourth or fifth time I'm watching it. It was the fourth time. 'Cause I turned to Isabel
yeah,
and I go, man, fucking Tom,
yeah,
he does have that Riz.
yeah,
And I think that has helped that man so much,
yeah,
because if he is not charismatic, and if he is just crazy Scientology guy
right,
who might make like good action,
yeah,
but you don't give a fuck about anything else that he's doing,
yeah.
that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Um, but we've had three movies so far. So far,
Mm.
actually, we're gonna have four. There are part one of X.
Spider-Man.
So we got Spider Man,
We got
Fast
Fast
X,
X
we
Mission.
got Mission, and Exorcist.
Oh yeah,
Exorcist is a part one of a trilogy.
yeah.
However, I think
I'm willing to.
I'm not considering that one quite yet, because that
No,
one might be like full movie, right?
right
It's not a part one, but who knows? I think this is the best use of a part one
of the three that
of
we've
the
seen.
three. I feel like this movie says we're looking for the key, we're figuring out what it opens and where it is,
Yeah,
and that's what you get.
yeah.
Whereas I think even to this day, my frustration with Spider Verse, I feel like there was nothing accomplished in that movie.
I won't go as that far as to say, but I will say yes. This movie does feel of the three, it feels like the most cohesive whole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I do like that this movie is, it's not making gangbusters like the other movies were.
which is kind of crazy. I mean, there's a clearish explanation as to why, but it's still kind of like considering what happened with Top Gun last year.
Yeah,
Like it
I
is kind of
think,
crazy.
well, also Top Gun didn't have the competition.
Yeah,
This movie came out 10 days
before
before
Barbenheimer.
Barbenheimer, and
Yeah,
that was like a whole
yeah.
cultural like thing. Honestly, I think the smart move would have been to move Mission Impossible to like late August.
You need something in late August. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so like. I think the Meg one also came out in late August, but it's such like a sad time. Like you fucking need something.
And there is something about like a late August like sleeper hit that happens almost every year. Like even Guardians came out in
Well,
August.
that and how the MCU in general was able to push
The
the
summer
calendar.
season,
Yeah,
yeah,
that early,
fucking wild.
right?
That
Like,
like it's because
yeah,
of the MCU that summer
yeah,
season now starts like the first week
fucking March
of
sometimes.
May,
Yeah,
April sometimes
yeah,
with like Avengers Endgame. But I mean, here's the thing: the movie cost so much fucking money because
yeah,
of COVID, and that's I think the only reason why the movie is not being as financially successful. It already doubled almost its budget.
right.
No, not quite. But I think it's such a long-standing franchise. You got Tom Cruise. They're gonna make a sequel. It'll be fine. And I will absolutely be here for it. I still hope that one day you will watch at least 4, 5, and 6.
Maybe one day.
So you can join us, me and Isabel.
Is this movie is the next one coming out next year, or is it a 2-year gap?
I believe next year was the plan, but
Okay.
with writers and actors on strike.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And Spider-Man delayed indefinitely.
I mean, that was kind of rumored
Yeah.
because they said that they hadn't recorded any
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
Which, from what I know, as far as like anime goes, like the voice acting is not like the longest process.
It helps the characters are wearing masks.
Absolutely. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But we are gonna take a quick break here, and we will be back with our second recording for today. A completely opposite movie.
Spooky.
Yes, I love me a summer spooky.
Completely
Man.
opposite. This one was American as fuck. This next one's Australian as fuck.
It is almost like.
Do you remember the American Australian Alliance on Reddit? That was like 7 years ago. That was it was a thing. It was a thing.
I have to look that up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to our ramblings for an hour. We will be back soon with another episode. Please remember to subscribe and share with your friends because we were off for a full month.
Yeah.
People probably forgot that we even existed.
We need them checks.
We need them checks from Spotify for zero. It's like a residual check from an actor in Lizzie McGuire. $0. Here's your check. I will pay 25 cents for a stamp to give you zero. Fucking wild. All right, everybody. Until then, he has been Thano.
He has been Javier.
This has been the Cine-Scoots podcast. Bye.
Bye.